Welcome everyone to the next Breath of Life Conversations. Welcome back. I'm excited for you to hear this one. I actually received a message from a friend, a student of mine, and I wanted to immediately, as soon as I read it, I immediately wanted to have this be an episode. So let me read you what it is like what she wrote, and let's dive in. Hi, Abby. I was thinking this morning about love and how it can be difficult for healers and beings in the spiritual realm. Although sometimes we are fine with our own space, keeping our skills, visions, and awkwardness, quote unquote, to ourselves, it is hard to find a partner that understands. Or maybe we create patterns of particular type of relationships. I'm talking about romantic love, by the way. How beautiful for Mary Magdalene to have crossroads with Jesus. What a tremendous source of inspiration and impactful encounter. I see it with my daughter, who is embracing herself, but many men find her gifts and spiritual sensitivity weird. I have learned to keep my spirituality discreetly shy or reserved, not so much so in the last few years. What are my thoughts? She, of course, ends with no need to reply, though. And of course, I replied. And I wanted to dive into this here because I think it's such a beautiful question to ask. And there was definitely some points that I wanted to make. And the big thing that I want everyone to know when it comes to what do you do when you're either dating or already in a relationship and intuition is very important to you. Intuitive gifts and abilities are really important to you. How do you navigate that in your relationships, in your partnerships? How do you continue to move forward together? And the only answer that matters is communication. That's the only thing that matters. It's the only one. And the reason for that is because if you're single and you're out in the dating world, one of the biggest things about dating in your 20s and 30s is you continuously asking yourself, do you know yourself? It's this really interesting dynamic of saying, I'm discovering myself with someone, through someone, but I'm also discovering myself on my own, and my own individuality, my own path. And communication with both yourself and with others is paramount. The people who struggle the most in the dating world are the ones who cannot be honest and can't communicate well, that honesty. I will, I feel like I've said it before. I will say it again. I will say it again and again and again. I am currently single and have been for a very long time. This is not something that bothers me, although it is something that has lately come into a question in my mind of whether or not this is something that I still want to be. And one of the things that I know for absolute certain is that I would never go into the dating realm not being completely honest about the fact that I'm a medical intuitive, that I can see things that others can't see, that I can hear things others can't hear. And no, I am not crazy. No, I am not bipolar. No, I am not schizophrenic. That has all been ruled out. Okay, I'm very well aware that what I can see and hear and sense and feel and know without any real explanation of that is not what necessarily the next person is going to be able to perceive. I'm well aware of that. And the person who is going to be in my life has to also be aware of that. And not aware of that as oh, that's just something that we can sort of like forget about because we'll cover it up like an unwanted birthmark. But that's something that is forward facing. It is a part of my life. And if I can't express that, if I cannot live my truth, then there is literally no point. Because if you draw this through to conclusion, if I were to keep that hidden, it would not be good at the end of the day. Somebody would end up getting hurt. Myself, my partner, or both of us all together. Because at the end of the day, I would have been lying. And as time immemorial will tell you, as history will tell you, lying is never a good thing. Never, especially in relationship. And for all of those out there that are asking the question now, well, what if I am being honest and I'm still having a hard time finding my person? They're not for you. I know this seems like me being probably incredibly like minimalistic in this response, but it really truly is not any more difficult than that. If you are finding people who say, "Oh, that's weird," or "Oh, that's too much for me," or "Oh, I don't believe in that and I can't have somebody in my life that does that." They're not for you. So wish them well and tell them to get gone. Why would you want to try to make something work with somebody who very clearly can't accept all of you? That sounds banana balls to me. So it's nothing to worry about. And I actually find it quite hilarious that there are individuals who would sit there and say, "Oh, here's this person who can't accept all of who I am in all of my weird, wondrous splendor," and would say, "Well, maybe if I'm just quiet about it, then that will make things easier." Or maybe if I don't practice anymore, maybe that will be okay. If I deny myself, if I self betray myself, then everything will be fine. So, in my mind, there is only one option, and that's to be truthful, and that is to communicate that as well as I possibly can. Because I'm not changing myself. I'm not going to sit and pretend like I don't have these gifts and abilities. And I really don't want somebody in my life who I'm going to have to sit and placate to because they're uncomfortable with a version of me and a very strong aspect of me. That sounds awful. And it does not sound like a relationship I would ever want to be in. So, to all of those individuals that say, like, I just think that it's just a little too much, your intuitive stuff. Okay, bye. Okay, bye. Like, very simple. Now, this brings us to if you're already in a relationship. If you're already in a relationship and intuitive knowledge and gifts and abilities wasn't already a part of your life and it came into your life, I can completely understand any hesitation, fearfulness that you might have, some hesitancy, because it's not like you're lying. It's not like you lied. You were one you were in one place when you found the person that you fell in love with. And you were very honest about that. Maybe there were some things you weren't honest about, but for the most part, something as big as developing intuitive psychic abilities was not something that was, even on the radar. What I tell people is don't hide it as it comes out of you. As you gain this interest in the unseen, in the cosmic, in the spiritual, in the intuitive, don't hide that shit. Keep it out in the open. If you're a person who is getting into this world via astrology, tell your partner that you want their birth date and their birth time and their place of birth so that you can look up their natal chart. Tell them what it is that you find. Tell them what's on yours. If you're a person who gets into this world via tarot or oracle cards, pull them out at the kitchen table while they're sitting there doing their balancing their checkbook or their taxes or their whatever, and play and ask them to pick a card and have it be out in the open. If you're learning about the chakras and meditation, ask them if they're willing to learn and sit with you. Or if they're not, simply have conversations. You're having conversations all day long with them. You're telling them about your day, they're telling you about their day. Have what you're learning and the things that you are finding fascinating be a topic of conversation that you're having. They don't have to join in with you, as in they don't have to become a practitioner, or um they don't have to be like, oh, this is going to become my world too. But if it's happening in the light for them, if it's happening in real time, they have nothing to complain about. It's not like all of a sudden one day you wake up and you just start throwing an altar together and you haven't even had any sort of conversations or anything, right? And just all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're this entirely new being, and they're sitting here going like, who the hell are you? Like episode of the Body Snatchers much? Like, do it, have your discoveries be in the open. And really, isn't that what a relationship is all about? Is being able to grow and change together in real time, in the light. I don't know of a single relationship that stays the same for 50 years. I don't know a single relationship that lasts for 20, 30, 50 years where the two individuals in that relationship sit and say that the person that they first got together with is exactly the same person now, decades later. What I do hear though is people getting out of relationships, relationships breaking because people lied by omission or flat out lied saying, no, that's not important to me. But then in a back room somewhere, they were off, you know, learning about the occult, and then all of a sudden are now, trying to run a cult. Like that shit breaks relationships. It ruins marriages. It ruins commitments. You can't you can't learn this stuff. You can't learn a fundamental aspect of who you are and expect that if you just keep it to yourself until you're quote unquote ready, like that the person that you are with is going to just be like, oh yeah, sure, okay, fine. There might be some people who have a really fast reflex, like they can hear something out of the blue and they can process it really, really quickly, and they can come to the, yeah, okay, that's fine. You know what I mean? Um, but they're a really small part of the population. Many, many, many people need time to process. And so it's easier if you get things in smaller chunks. So I would say if you are finding yourself in this space where you've started to learn about this intuitive knowledge and stuff like that, and you're in a relationship, have the conversations now. Talk about what you're interested in. Talk about what it is that you're learning. Don't hide it. If you hide it, it's only going to cause problems later, because you're going to be one version of yourself when you're with them, and you're going to be another version of yourself with other people while you're learning this. And if what you're learning is really like soul led and it's calling you, there's going to come a time, and that time is not going to be far in the future. It's going to be quite soon, where that version that you've been hiding is what you realize is your true self. And it can't be hidden anymore. And when it can't be hidden anymore, that's when it's going to force its way out. And that's going to cost you. So don't pay a higher price later. Pay the pennies of saying to your spouse or your partner, hey, by the way, like I am not really feeling our church anymore. And I'm feeling called more to looking into this other religion or this other practice or not going to church at all. I feel like I need to just go outside on Sundays. So, can we have a conversation about how you feel about that? About, Sundays not being, family church time. Maybe it's the conversation of, you know what, I plan on learning more about this thing called astrology or this thing called energy work because it's really calling to me and I'm not exactly sure where it's going to take me, but I'll continue to like keep you informed. Like, do you have any concerns that I can answer for you now? Like, these questions are important to have. And this, I want to bring this back to those who are dating because this is something that so many young people do not take into consideration, and that is that these are topics that you all need to have when you're dating. If you are not having the conversation of, yeah, I'm an intuitive, so I can feel things when I walk into a room, as readily as you have the conversation of, I don't want to have kids, which would be how I would start. I wouldn't maybe start the date that way, but at some point in the dating, before I said yes to being in a committed relationship with that individual, there would be that conversation of I don't want to birth children. So if you want to get me pregnant, that's a no. So if that is a deal breaker for you, and no, by the way, I'm not changing my mind. This is something I'm 100% set on. Like 100% set on. As set on that as I breathe every day. And if you're wondering how a woman could possibly think that, and be that committed to that, let's sit down and have a conversation about all of the different ways that I have had, like, I've worked through this. But also don't try to sit and decide that you can change my mind just because you think you can. Like, that's just not going to happen. That conversation is going to happen as quickly as me having the conversation of, yeah, no, I look at people and I can see their energy. Yes, I've got rules and regulations and protocols that I put in place. So no, I'm not looking at yours. I'm going to ask you questions and you're going to tell me it, but also understand that I can hear when people lie because I'm clairaudient, and I'm not going to necessarily call you out on it. But if you lie to me, I'm going to pick my battles. If I feel like it's necessary for me to call you out on, then I will. So if that's going to bother you, not being able to lie to me, you may want to reconsider this moving forward. Right. So, like, it's stuff like that, like having conversations like, and I get it. Like, y'all are probably going to handle that a lot differently than I would. As far as like, what I just gave you is literally how I would approach a date. And y'all are probably like, and that's why she's single. Um, but I feel very strongly about who I am and the choices that I've made for my life and how I live my life and who I am. And so you have to understand that your religion, your spirituality, your intuitive abilities, you need to talk about them as much as you would talk about whether or not you want to have children, whether or not you want to get pregnant, which are two very different things. Whether you want to, whether or not you are political, or what kind of, political stance you have, whether or not you believe in charity, whether or not you believe in taking in the homeless, feeding the homeless, whether you feel like, people are lazy or not. We I watch people date now, and it actually makes me sad because the things that they talk about is what video games they like, what movies they like, what music they like. They barely talk about what books they like and about, where they like to travel. And that's where it stopped. I'm not saying that those conversations aren't important to have whether you're dating or currently in a relationship, those are absolutely important to have. But it can't stop there. You can't say, well, I'm going to decide whether or not this is going to be my lifelong partner or even my partner just for now based off of where they like to travel. That's not enough. Really consider what it is that you need to know about somebody in order to make a good decision. And I'm just saying, you need to understand who you are and how your mind works and what you're thinking. This isn't about them, ultimately. What I want you to understand is that this is about you knowing you. This is the biggest thing that I teach my students is if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what you're feeling when you feel it, it's what I call affective intelligence. If you don't know this shit, you're setting yourself up for failure and you have completely missed the plot. You completely missed the plot. So do yourself a favor and remember that it is of the utmost importance to be honest, to understand how to communicate. And I get it that the communication is not necessarily something that we're taught, certainly not as a kid, and certainly not as a teenager. We're told that we have to figure it out when we're an adult. And I'm going to say, yeah, you have to figure it out, but I would say learning how to communicate is really not that hard as, it's not as hard as people would like to make it. When I was a teenager, young adult, I made it way more complicated than it needed to be. And truly, it comes down to, can you just be honest? Can you be honest? And when you when you figured out what honest is in that moment, it's about just being as kind as you can. I used to not do the kind part. I used to be very blunt. And I will say I'm still blunt now, but there's it's my bluntness is has kindness on each end. Um so it's padded bluntness is what I would call it. It's padded bluntness. Unless of course you need just straight up bluntness. But the idea is you're never trying to hurt somebody. You're just trying to tell your truth. And sometimes truth does hurt, yes. But I would say truth that hurts is always going to be better than lies that kill. And if you lie, it's always going to lead to somebody being so hurt that they were betrayed, because that's what comes out of that. There's very few times when somebody will hear a lie and be able to come around that and say, yeah, you didn't betray me with that lie. When you're a person who is saying that part of your truth is that you can see ghosts and spirits that have passed on, you know how to communicate with star beings, and you have this ability to perceive what happened in a room when there's nobody in that room. Like these things these things sound crazy without any context. So you want to provide that context. You truly do. All right, everyone. That is that's today's episode, and I'm so excited to read the comments and hear what you guys think about this episode. We will see you next time on the next Breath of Life Conversations. Bye, y'all.